What would you do if your own child, your flesh and blood, charged you rent to live under their roof? It's a question that sounds absurd. It's a question most of us would dismiss with a nervous laugh. But for Dorothy Williams, a 67-year-old widow from Cedar Falls, Iowa, it wasn't absurd at all. It was her life. Dorothy wasn't a stranger to hardship. Life had taught her resilience. She had buried her husband Harold just a year earlier, and in the silence that followed, she found herself craving family more than ever. She thought moving in with her only son Marcus and his wife Ashley would bring her comfort, a chance to heal, a chance to belong. But what began as a promise of warmth quickly unraveled into something darker, something that would test the very definition of family, of love, and of loyalty. The first days seemed almost idyllic. Dorothy arrived with only 2 suitcases, her wedding ring, and a battered photo album full of memories she couldn't bear to leave behind. Marcus greeted her at the door with a stiff hug, Ashley with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Dorothy told herself it was nerves. After all, living together required adjustment. The grandchildren, 2 bright-eyed little ones, ran to her legs with squeals of delight. Grandma's here!" they shouted, tugging at her coat. Dorothy's heart swelled. For a moment, she believed she'd made the right decision. But then, 3 days later, Marcus sat her down at the kitchen table. His fingers tapped against the wood, his eyes avoiding hers. "Mom," he began, voice tight, "Ashley and I have been talking. We think it's only fair that you contribute to the household." Dorothy blinked. "Of course, Marcus. I can help with groceries or the utilities." "No," Marcus interrupted, clearing his throat. "We think rent makes the most sense. $1,300 a month." Silence fell heavy across the room. Dorothy's chest tightened. 1,300. Nearly every cent of her Social Security. She forced a smile. Marcus, sweetheart. That's nearly all I have. You know that." Ashley folded her arms. Her tone was cool, calculated. "Well, Dorothy, it's less than what you'd pay for senior housing. And at least here, you're with family." That word family echoed in Dorothy's mind. Family was supposed to mean safety, unconditional love. Yet here it felt transactional, a contract written in cold ink. She agreed, because what choice did she have? She couldn't bear the thought of a lonely apartment, or worse, a nursing home. But in that moment, something shifted inside her. A small fracture that would, in time, widen into an unbridgeable chasm. The months that followed painted a painful picture. Dorothy became less a guest and more a servant. She rose before dawn to cook breakfast, scrub floors, fold laundry. She tended to the grandchildren as if they were her full-time job. And every first of the month, she slipped an envelope across the table to Marcus. $1,300. Her dignity, piece by piece. At night, alone in her makeshift room in the living area, she whispered to herself, trying to summon strength. "It's temporary. They're family. It will get better." But deep down, she knew it wouldn't. The hook of Dorothy's story isn't just the cruelty she endured. It's the secret she carried, a secret she had guarded for over 3 decades. For 32 years, Dorothy had played the lottery. It's the same set of numbers, week after week, year after year. Numbers Harold had once helped her choose birthdays, anniversaries, tiny fragments of a life they'd built together. It was a ritual, a promise to herself that life could change, that fate could still smile upon her. She never told Marcus, never told Ashley. It was her own private dream. And one cold evening, sitting under a flickering bulb in the basement. Yes, by then she had been moved downstairs under the pretense of giving her space. Dorothy unfolded the crinkled ticket and checked the numbers. Her hands shook, her breath caught. Every number matched. $53 million. But before the euphoria could settle in, before she could even decide what to do next, Marcus and Ashley would make a discovery that would ignite the most devastating confrontation of Dorothy's life. They would see not a mother, not a grandmother, but a windfall. A jackpot meant to fund their ambitions. And what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that Harold, before his death, had already planted the seeds that would expose their greed to the world. Dorothy's story is not just about money. It's about betrayal, about the lengths to which people will go when blinded by entitlement. And most of all, it's about one woman reclaiming her independence, her dignity, and her truth. Because sometimes the ones you trust most are the ones who stand to hurt you the deepest. And sometimes, just sometimes, fate has a way of arming the powerless with the one thing that can be ignored: undeniable truth. "You think I'm just some burden," Dorothy would later whisper, staring down her son with a courage she never knew she had. "But you've forgotten something. I am not weak. And I am not yours to control." That moment, her voice steady, her eyes unflinching, would become the turning point. But before we reach that battle, before the world knows Dorothy's truth, we must return to the beginning. Back to the choices that forced her into the basement. Back to the nights when loneliness gnawed at her bones. Back to the small rituals that kept her hope alive. This is where Dorothy's fight for dignity truly begins.
When Dorothy first carried her suitcases into Marcus and Ashley's home, she believed she was stepping into a season of healing. The house in Cedar Falls wasn't extravagant, but it was full of life. Children's toys scattered across the floor, the smell of coffee brewing, the hum of a dishwasher in the background. After months of lonely silence in her own house, the chaos felt like comfort. The first week passed with cautious optimism. Dorothy baked cookies with her grandchildren, told them bedtime stories, and laughed softly when Marcus teased her about fussing over everyone. Ashley was polite, if a little distant, but Dorothy brushed it off as simple adjustment. On the surface, everything looked fine. Beneath it, though, tiny cracks began to spread. It started with the rent conversation. That moment lingered in Dorothy's heart like a bruise that refused to fade. 1,300, Marcus had said. A number that wasn't just steep, it was crushing. Dorothy agreed, swallowing her pride, telling herself it was temporary. But it wasn't. Every first of the month became a ritual she dreaded. Dorothy would write the check, her hands trembling slightly, and slide it across the table. Marcus would take it without looking her in the eye, and Ashley would tuck it into a drawer with an air of entitlement. Dorothy told herself, "It's fine, at least I'm with family." But in her quieter moments, she couldn't escape the truth. She wasn't being cared for. She was being used. The chores followed. At first, they were framed as help. "Mom, could you keep an eye on the kids while Ashley and I run errands?" Marcus asked one Saturday. "Dorothy, do you mind starting dinner tonight? We're swamped," Ashley added one Tuesday. Dorothy didn't mind. She loved her grandchildren. She had always enjoyed cooking, but soon the requests multiplied. Babysitting wasn't just occasional, it was daily. Dinner wasn't just once in a while, it was every night. Laundry baskets piled up at her feet, vacuuming became her silent duty, and little by little, Dorothy realized she had slipped into the role of unpaid housekeeper. One evening, exhausted after scrubbing the bathroom, she overheard Marcus and Ashley talking in the kitchen. "She should be grateful," Ashley's voice drifted down the hall. "We're giving her a place to live. The least she can do is pull her weight." Dorothy froze. The words cut deeper than she expected. Grateful? She had given them $1,300 just that morning. She was cooking, cleaning, raising their children. And still, they saw her as a burden. That night, Dorothy lay awake staring at the ceiling, whispering into the dark. "Harold, if only you were here, you'd know what to do." The shift came quietly, but decisively. Marcus approached her one Sunday afternoon, his expression rehearsed. "Mom," he began, avoiding her eyes, "Ashley and I think it would be best if you had more privacy. The living room isn't really working out." Dorothy frowned. "Privacy? I don't need privacy, Marcus. I'm fine here." "It's just," Ashley interjected, her smile tight, "the kids need more space to play. And honestly, having your bed out here, it makes the house feel cramped." Dorothy's stomach dropped. She knew what was coming before Marcus spoke the words. "We've cleared out the basement," he said quickly. "It'll be your own space, a little quieter. You'll have it all to yourself." The basement? Concrete floors, one tiny window, damp walls that smelled faintly of mildew. Dorothy tried to protest. Marcus, Mom, it's for the best, Marcus said firmly, his voice brooking no argument. The move happened that very evening. Dorothy carried her belongings downstairs, her suitcases, her photo album, the quilt she had sewn with Harold decades ago. She arranged them in the cold, dim space, trying to convince herself it wasn't a banishment. But when she lay down that night, the ceiling above her echoing with footsteps and laughter she was no longer part of, she felt the truth pressed down like a weight. She had been pushed out of sight, out of mind. And yet Dorothy endured. She reminded herself daily of the reasons. She told herself she was needed, that she was still part of the family. She clung to the smiles of her grandchildren, to the moments when their tiny arms wrapped around her neck and whispered, "I love you, Grandma." Those moments were her anchor. But in the quiet hours, alone in the basement, she kept another ritual alive, her lottery tickets. Every Wednesday and Saturday, she sat at her small folding table, pen in hand, filling in the same sequence of numbers she had chosen 32 years ago with Harold. Numbers that carried pieces of their life together. "Someday," she whispered to herself as she slipped the ticket into her Bible for safekeeping. "Someday, it'll be our turn." Dorothy never expected that someday to arrive. Not really. It was more comfort than conviction, a way to imagine that life could still surprise her with something good. But fate, as it turned out, had been listening all along. One evening, after another long day of babysitting, Dorothy sat hunched at her table in the basement. The television upstairs hummed faintly through the floorboards, announcing Powerball numbers. She pulled out her ticket, not expecting anything more than routine. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. One by one, the numbers lined up. Every single one. Her ticket had won $53 million. Dorothy sat frozen, staring at the paper in her hands. She wanted to laugh, to cry, to run upstairs and tell the world, but instinct stopped her. She tucked the ticket back into her Bible, her heart pounding. This was more than money. This was freedom, independence, a chance to reclaim the dignity she had been slowly stripped of. But she wasn't the only one who would soon know. Because secrets, no matter how carefully hidden, have a way of coming to light. And when Marcus and Ashley discovered her ticket, when they realized what Dorothy had in her hands, the fragile balance of the household would collapse into a storm of greed, betrayal, and a fight for power that none of them could walk away from unchanged. The basement was cold that morning. Dorothy shuffled through the laundry, humming faintly to keep her spirits up. Her hand brushed against the side pocket of her old cardigan, and something crackled. She reached inside and pulled out a folded slip of paper, her lottery ticket. For 32 years, she had played the same numbers. She'd stopped believing anything would come of it, but routine gave her comfort. She set the ticket aside on the washing machine, meaning to throw it out. Later, as the evening news droned upstairs, a voice caught her attention. "One lucky ticket in Iowa has matched all 6 numbers. Powerball jackpot, $53 million. Dorothy's hands froze. Slowly, she picked up the ticket, her heart pounding as she read the numbers on the screen. One by one, they matched. Every single one. She sank into a chair. "Oh, Harold!" Her late husband's face filled her memory. They had always joked that their numbers would hit after they were gone. Now it was real and terrifying. Dorothy kept the ticket hidden for days, tucked inside a sealed envelope under her mattress. She whispered to herself, "Stay calm. Think before you act." But tension in the house thickened. Ashley noticed Dorothy clutching her purse tighter. Marcus saw her retreating more often to the basement. They exchanged suspicious glances. One evening, Ashley barged in without knocking. Dorothy startled, shoving the envelope into her pocket. Ashley's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" "Nothing," Dorothy said quickly, tucking it away. Ashley's smile was thin. "You're a terrible liar." The discovery came by accident, or perhaps by snooping. While Dorothy was out hanging laundry, Ashley searched the basement. Inside a box of knitting supplies, she found the envelope. Her gasp echoed against the cement walls. She stormed upstairs, waving it. Marcus, you won't believe this. Marcus opened the slip, eyes widening. 53 million. Mom's been hiding it. When Dorothy returned, both of them were waiting in the kitchen. Ashley's voice dripped with false sweetness. So, Mom, when were you planning to tell us? Dorothy froze, the basket of clothes trembling in her hands. That ticket is mine. I bought it. I signed it. Marcus's jaw tightened. We're family. Family shares. Dorothy steadied her voice. Family doesn't charge rent to a widow and shove her in a basement. The air snapped with silence. Ashley's smile vanished. Ungrateful old woman. That night, Dorothy sat on her narrow bed, clutching the ticket. Fear gnawed at her. Fear they might steal it. Fear they might lock her away. But beneath the fear was a growing ember of defiance. She whispered, Not this time. I won't let them. Over the next days, Marcus and Ashley's true intentions surfaced. They browsed real estate listings, whispering excitedly about our new house. Ashley bragged on the phone about hiring a nanny once Dorothy was settled in a senior facility. Dorothy overheard every word. She pressed the ticket to her chest. They'll erase me the moment they can, unless I fight back. In a rare moment of courage, she confronted Marcus directly. That money isn't yours. It's my name on that ticket. My numbers. My win. Marcus's face darkened. Do you really think you can handle $53 million? You can barely manage the bills. I managed a household for 40 years, she snapped. I raised you. Don't you dare say I can't manage my own life. For a heartbeat, the old mother-son bond flickered. But then Marcus looked away, shame curdling into resentment. That night, Dorothy retrieved the envelope and slipped it into her handbag. She could almost hear Harold's voice. Be smart, Dot. Protect yourself. Her hands trembled as she whispered, I will. I promise. She didn't know exactly what came next, but she knew she couldn't stay silent. The discovery of the ticket had changed everything, and soon the fight for her freedom and her fortune would begin. The night after the confrontation, Dorothy lay awake on her narrow bed, the envelope pressed against her chest. Upstairs, she could hear Marcus and Ashley pacing, their voices rising and falling in heated whispers. She couldn't catch every word, but she heard enough. Lawyers, guardianship, get her out. Her heart pounded. They're planning to take it. They're planning to take me. The next morning, Dorothy acted calm. She cooked breakfast as if nothing had happened. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. Ashley barely touched her plate. Marcus scrolled on his phone, muttering about property listings. Dorothy cleared her throat. I have an errand today. Doctor's appointment. Ashley didn't look up. Fine. Don't be long. Dorothy slipped out the door with her handbag. Inside, the ticket was sealed in a plastic sleeve, but she wasn't going to the doctor. She was going to town, to a lawyer. At the law office, Dorothy's hands shook as she explained her story to a sharp-eyed woman named Claire Hammond. They charge you rent? In your own son's house? Claire asked, appalled. Dorothy nodded. They want the ticket. They'll put me in a home if I let them. Claire leaned forward. Listen carefully. The ticket belongs to whoever signed it. Did you sign? Dorothy opened the envelope and showed her. Her signature was scrawled across the back, a little shaky but unmistakable. Good, Claire said firmly. That means it's yours. They can scream all they want, but the law is on your side. Tears welled in Dorothy's eyes. I just want my life back. My husband, Harold, he'd want me safe. Claire's tone softened. Then we'll make you safe. And if they've been exploiting you, we'll make sure the world knows. Meanwhile, back at the house, Marcus discovered Dorothy's absence. He stormed into the basement, found her knitting basket empty, then checked her drawers. Nothing. Panic edged his voice as he called Ashley. She's gone, and she took the ticket. Ashley's face twisted with rage. She's going to ruin everything. We need to stop her before she does something stupid. But Dorothy had already taken the first step toward freedom. Over the following days, she worked quietly with Claire. They arranged for her to open a private account, secured the ticket in a safe deposit box, and prepared documents proving her ownership. Claire also contacted a local reporter known for covering elder abuse cases. "If your son and his wife have been exploiting you, people need to hear your story," Claire explained. Dorothy hesitated. "I'm not used to being on camera. Think of it as protection," Claire assured. "Once the truth is public, they can't spin it their way." The breaking point came when Marcus and Ashley confronted her directly. She had just returned from Claire's office when Marcus cornered her in the driveway. "Where have you been?" he demanded. Dorothy tightened her grip on her purse. "Handling my business." Ashley sneered. "Your business? That money could change our lives. Don't you care about family?" Dorothy's eyes burned. "Family doesn't treat me like a maid. Family doesn't shove me into a basement and plan to dump me in a home." Marcus's face reddened. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do," Dorothy shot back. "And the world's going to know it too." The next morning, the local news aired her interview. Dorothy sat stiffly in a chair, speaking slowly but firmly. She told everything: how she'd been forced to pay rent she couldn't afford, how she'd done all the housework for free, how they'd isolated her in the basement, and how, after 32 years, her lottery ticket had finally hit. The reporter's final question was simple: "What do you want now?" Dorothy answered, her voice steady: "I want to live free. I want to live with dignity." When the story aired, Cedar Falls buzzed with outrage. Neighbors who had smiled politely now muttered behind Marcus and Ashley's backs. Online comments condemned their greed. A church group even reached out, offering Dorothy support. Ashley smashed a glass against the sink. "She's turned everyone against us." Marcus buried his face in his hands. "It's over, Ash. We can't fight the press." But Ashley wasn't ready to surrender. "We'll contest it. We'll say she's senile. Marcus cut her off. "No, she signed the ticket. It's legally hers. If we push this, we'll lose everything." For Dorothy, the change was immediate. Claire helped her secure temporary housing in a senior-friendly apartment complex. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. No rent to Marcus, no chores demanded at dawn. Just quiet, freedom, and a locked door she alone controlled. She sat by the window that first night, sipping tea. The city lights twinkled in the distance. She whispered, "I did it, Harold. I'm free." But deep inside, she knew the fight wasn't over. The lottery money was safe, but Marcus and Ashley still lurked, their debts mounting, their anger simmering. And then came Claire's final revelation, one that tied everything back to Harold. "Dorothy," she said, placing a file on the table. Before Harold passed, he hired a private investigator. He had suspicions about Marcus and Ashley. The investigator uncovered serious financial trouble and a plan to use you as their safety net. Dorothy's breath caught. "He knew?" Claire nodded. "He also set up a trust in your name, $500,000. He wanted to make sure you were never left helpless." Dorothy pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. For the first time since Harold's death, she felt his presence not just in memory, but in action. She closed the file slowly, her resolve hardening. Marcus and Ashley had underestimated her, just as they had underestimated Harold. "They thought I was weak," she murmured. "They thought they could bury me, but they were wrong." The turning point had come. Dorothy was no longer a victim. She was a woman with power, legal, financial, and moral. And soon, she would confront her son and daughter-in-law with the truth they could no longer escape. Dorothy stood at the threshold of Marcus and Ashley's home, the same door she had walked through months earlier with hope of family, belonging, and warmth. Now her steps were heavy but steady, carrying with her the weight of documents, truths, and a quiet storm that had been building for years. Claire, her lawyer, walked beside her. The private investigator Harold had hired was waiting in a nearby car, ready to corroborate every detail. Dorothy's pulse thrummed in her ears. This isn't fear anymore. This is justice. Inside, Marcus and Ashley sat at the dining table. Bills were scattered like autumn leaves across the surface. Credit card statements, foreclosure notices, overdue loans. Their faces were pale, drawn tight with stress. Ashley glanced up first, her lips curved in a brittle smile. Well, look who decided to come back. Dorothy placed her bag on the chair, pulling out a manila folder. Her voice was calm. I didn't come to stay. I came to talk. Marcus scoffed. Talk? After you humiliated us on television? You think we can just sit down and chat? Dorothy opened the folder, sliding papers across the table. No, Marcus. I came to end this. Ashley picked up one sheet, her eyes narrowing. What is this? Claire's voice cut through the room like steel. That's documentation of financial abuse, evidence of rent charged illegally to your mother, of unpaid labor she was coerced into performing, and of attempts to claim property that is not yours. Marcus's jaw tightened. This is family business. You've got no right. Dorothy interrupted, her voice sharper than they had ever heard. Family business? You charged me $1,300 to sleep in a basement. You tried to steal the only thing I had left. That's not family. That's exploitation. The investigator stepped in from the doorway, holding another folder. And here's more, he said, dropping the file onto the pile. Your father suspected this before he passed. He hired me to confirm it. I tracked your debts, your gambling losses, your failed investments. He knew you planned to use your mother as your safety net. Marcus's face blanched. That's a lie. Dorothy's eyes glistened, but her spine stayed straight. No, Marcus, it's the truth. Harold saw through you, and he made sure I'd be protected. She pulled out one last document, the trust. $500,000. My husband set this up before he died. He knew I'd need it. He knew you wouldn't stand by me. Ashley slammed her palm on the table. This is ridiculous. You're just an old woman, Dorothy. You don't understand the world we're living in. That money could have saved us. Don't you care? Dorothy turned slowly toward her. I cared when I cooked your meals. I cared when I scrubbed your floors. I cared when I tucked your children into bed while you two ran off chasing things you couldn't afford, but you didn't care about me. Her voice cracked but didn't waver. Now I care about myself. Silence filled the room. Even the children's laughter from upstairs seemed to hush, as if the house itself held its breath. Marcus finally spoke, but his tone was hollow. So that's it? You're just walking away? Dorothy gathered the papers back into her folder. No, I'm rising, and you'll have to face the consequences of what you've done. Claire added firmly, if you attempt to harass or interfere with Dorothy again, legal action will follow. This is over. Dorothy walked to the door, pausing for just a moment. She turned back, her eyes meeting Marcus's. You could have chosen love. You chose greed, and greed will never love you back. Then she stepped outside, the autumn air cool against her skin, each breath feeling freer than the last. That night, in her new apartment, Dorothy sat with a cup of tea and Harold's old photo. She whispered, We did it, Harold. They can't hurt me anymore. For the first time in years, Dorothy didn't feel like a burden. She felt like a survivor. She felt like herself. And somewhere deep down, she knew her story was more than just survival. It was a warning, a reminder that dignity is worth fighting for, and that even the most underestimated voices can rise against exploitation. If you've been following Dorothy's journey, you know this is more than just a story. It is a reflection of struggles many elders face across America. What do you think? Should Dorothy have forgiven Marcus and Ashley, or was she right to walk away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Truth Unraveled, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next chapter. Because the truth isn't always pretty, but it's always worth uncovering. The days following Dorothy's confrontation were a whirlwind. What had once been private pain was now a public reckoning. The story of a 67-year-old widow standing up against her own son and daughter-in-law resonated far beyond Cedar Falls. Local journalists who had first aired her plight saw their segment go viral. News anchors discussed it with tones of outrage and admiration. Social media exploded with hashtags, Chalk Justice for Dorothy, Chalk Elder Rights, Chalk Greed Exposed. Dorothy hadn't expected any of it. She only wanted her freedom, but suddenly, she had become a symbol. One evening, as Dorothy sat with Claire in her modest new apartment, her phone buzzed endlessly with notifications. She pushed it aside. "I never wanted attention," Dorothy murmured, staring into her tea. Claire gave her a reassuring smile. "You didn't chase it, Dorothy. You earned it. You showed people what elder exploitation looks like. That matters." Dorothy sighed. "But Marcus, he's still my son. And now the whole world sees him as a villain." Claire leaned forward. "Marcus made his choices. You didn't create his greed. You just revealed it." Meanwhile, Marcus and Ashley faced the storm. Camera crews camped outside their house. Neighbors whispered, some offering sympathetic glances to Dorothy when they saw her in town. Banks began calling in debts after the investigators' findings became public record. Ashley snapped one evening, slamming a newspaper onto the table. The headline read, "Mother exploited by own family, lottery win sparks legal investigation." "This is insane, Marcus! We're drowning here! Everyone thinks we're monsters!" Marcus rubbed his temples, his voice low and bitter. "We did what we had to. She just had to make it a spectacle." Ashley shot back. "No, you had to make it about money. If you'd cared about her instead of the payout, none of this would have happened." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. In contrast, Dorothy's days began to brighten. She received letters from strangers, some handwritten, others typed. One from a woman in Ohio read, "My son tried to control my pension the same way. You gave me courage to say no." Another from a man in Florida. "I thought I was alone. Thank you for showing us we're not invisible." Dorothy cried as she read them. Not tears of despair, but of recognition. Her private struggle had become part of a much larger story, the silent suffering of countless seniors. A week later, Claire arranged a press conference. Dorothy was hesitant. "What if I freeze? What if I say the wrong thing?" Claire touched her hand. "Then you'll be human. That's all you need to be." Standing at the podium, Dorothy's hands trembled. Dozens of cameras pointed at her, microphones angled close. For a moment, she considered walking away. But then she thought of Harold, of the trust he had left, of the years she'd endured quietly. She cleared her throat. "My name is Dorothy Williams. I am a widow, a mother, and for too long, I was made to feel like a burden." The room hushed. "I moved in with family because I believed love meant safety. Instead, I was charged rent I could not afford, isolated in a basement and treated as less than human. But I am not less. None of us are." Her voice grew steadier. "I share my story not to shame, but to shed light. Elder exploitation is real. It happens in quiet rooms, behind closed doors, often by the people we trust most. And it must stop." Applause erupted. Reporters leaned forward, hungry for more. Dorothy finished simply, "I survived because I found courage, and I hope others will too." That night, news outlets across the country broadcasted her words. Pundits debated elder rights. Advocacy groups contacted her, asking if she'd partner on campaigns. One message in particular touched her. The director of a nonprofit invited Dorothy to join their board as an honorary voice for elder dignity. For the first time, Dorothy realized her suffering had become a platform for change. Marcus and Ashley, however, couldn't escape consequences. Legal notices arrived, citing elder financial abuse and fraud attempts. Their reputation in Cedar Falls was shattered. Businesses refused them credit. Neighbors distanced themselves. One afternoon, Marcus tried calling Dorothy. She stared at the screen, his name flashing. Her hand hovered over the phone, trembling. Finally, she let it ring into silence. She whispered to herself, "Love shouldn't hurt like this." Weeks passed, and Dorothy began crafting a new routine. Morning walks through the park, afternoons volunteering at a local library, helping children with reading. Evenings spent on her balcony, sipping tea under fading sunlight. Freedom felt strange, almost fragile, but it was hers. One evening, her neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, leaned over the balcony rail. "You've inspired so many of us, Dorothy. You should be proud." Dorothy smiled softly. "For the first time in a long time, I am." Dorothy Williams sat by the window of her new cottage, sunlight spilling across the wooden floor. The hum of late spring carried through the open panes, birdsong, the distant laughter of children, the steady rhythm of a world that had finally become gentle again. It had been 3 months since the storm, 3 months since she had stood at that podium, telling the world she was not invisible. 3 months since she had cut the last thread binding her to a life of exploitation. Now each morning felt like a promise rather than a burden. One afternoon, Dorothy walked into the small-town library where she had begun volunteering. Children rushed up to greet her. "Miss Dorothy, can you read the story about the fox again?" a little boy asked, tugging her sleeve. She laughed softly. "Of course, sweetheart. The clever fox never grows old, does he?" As she read aloud, her voice carried across the room, not shaky or subdued, but strong, full of life. Parents watching from the sidelines whispered to each other. One leaned over to another and said, "That's her, the woman from the news. She's the reason my mom spoke up about her situation." Dorothy overheard but kept reading, her heart swelling. She had become more than a survivor. She was a symbol of resilience, and that gave her life new purpose. Despite her newfound peace, memories still surfaced, dark, painful echoes of the basement, the dismissive tone of Marcus, the cold laughter of Ashley. Sometimes late at night she would wake in a sweat, hearing Marcus's words, "You're lucky we even let you stay here." But now, instead of curling into herself, Dorothy would sit up, breathe deeply, and whisper, "I am free. I am enough." Healing was not about erasing the past, but about reclaiming the future. Claire remained a steadfast companion. Over coffee one morning, she told Dorothy, "Do you realize what you've done? You didn't just win money, Dorothy. You won justice. You forced people to look at something they'd rather ignore." Dorothy smiled. "I didn't think I had that kind of power." Claire shook her head. "You always did. You just needed the chance to use it." Meanwhile, Marcus and Ashley's lives had unraveled further. Bankruptcy loomed, their home went up for sale. Former friends avoided them, their names tainted by scandal. Dorothy heard whispers that Ashley had left town to stay with relatives. Marcus attempted to call again, his number flashing across Dorothy's screen. She let it go to voicemail, then deleted it without listening. This time, there was no hesitation. She had learned that forgiveness didn't mean returning to the same cage. The lottery money gave Dorothy choices she had once believed impossible. She funded elder rights campaigns, supported a local women's shelter, and quietly helped struggling families in her town. But she never flaunted her wealth. She lived simply, valuing peace over extravagance. Her joy wasn't in the numbers on a bank statement, but in the lives she touched. One evening, while reviewing donation requests, Dorothy paused at one letter. It was from a nursing student named Emily who wrote, "I saw your speech, and it inspired me to focus my career on elder care. People deserve dignity at every age. Thank you for showing me that." Dorothy wiped away a tear. Harold would have been proud, she thought. Proud of her courage, proud of the life she was building. On the anniversary of Harold's passing, Dorothy visited his grave. She brought white lilies, his favorite. Kneeling down, she whispered, "You were right about Marcus, but you were also right about me. You said I was stronger than I believed. Today, I finally feel it." The wind stirred gently, as if carrying her words into the heavens. Dorothy stayed for a long time, not in sorrow, but in gratitude. She had survived, endured, and risen. Her final step in reclaiming life came when she bought a small piece of land near the edge of Cedar Falls, a garden property. Neighbors came to help her plant vegetables, flowers, and fruit trees. Children played among the rows, while elders sat together on benches Dorothy had installed. She called it Harold's Haven. When the ribbon was cut, Dorothy addressed the small crowd. "This isn't just my garden, it's ours. A place where no one is forgotten, where every voice matters, and where kindness always grows." The applause was warm, genuine. For the first time in years, Dorothy felt not only safe, but celebrated. As twilight descended that evening, Dorothy sat in the garden, the sky painted in hues of orange and violet. She closed her eyes and let the stillness wash over her. Her story was no longer about loss. It was about rebirth. Dorothy's journey teaches us something profound. No one should ever feel invisible, especially in their own family. Do you believe people like Marcus and Ashley deserve a second chance, or are some betrayals too deep to forgive? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want your voice in this conversation. And if Dorothy's story moved you, don't let it end here. Hit like, subscribe to Truth Unraveled, and ring the bell icon. By doing so, you help us bring more hidden stories into the light, stories that challenge, inspire, and remind us of the resilience within us all. Because the truth isn't just uncovered, it's lived,